President Trump today saying that the Department of Homeland Security is, quote, on alert after terrorist attacks in Spain. Mr. Trump also taking a swipe at Democrats, apparently referring to the battle over his travel ban. The obstructionist Democrats, he said, make security for our country very difficult. They use the courts, and associated delay at all times must stop. Joining me now to discuss the Islamic State threat in Europe, border security, and the Bannon exit, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and Fox News contributor John Bolton. Ambassador, let's start with Bannon, if you don't mind, because that's leading the headlines today. I think that what had more to do with his leaving than anything else was his comments on North Korea, where he essentially took the president, the commander-in-chief, the Secretary of State, and the Defense Secretary to task, saying that there was no military solution to North Korea. What do you think about that?
Well, maybe I should have a word with him. Perhaps I could persuade him otherwise. I actually think the decision that he was going to leave the White House was made before the comments. But, in fact, I don't think there's anybody at the White House, as I see it now, or in the administration, who's proposing the right policy for North Korea. I think people are misunderstanding a lot of what's been said about American retaliation if we're attacked. That's not a tough position. That's basic. Of course we're going to retaliate if we're attacked, and I would hope with devastating force. The real question...
But hold on a second. I would assume, then, that you were vehemently opposed to the notion that the military option should be taken off the table no matter what they do.
Right, exactly. Look, the fact is the diplomatic options with North Korea itself are just a waste of time at this point. Even worse, they give the North, as is often the case in proliferation, the proliferator benefits from wasting more time on futile negotiations. The only diplomatic play left, in my view, is trying to persuade China it's in their national interest to see the two Koreas reunified. I think that's a hard argument to make, but I do think it's the right course. Other than that, then, you have to say to yourself, are you content to leave North Korea with a capability to hit targets in the United States with nuclear weapons, or to sell those weapons to Iran or terrorists or others? My answer to that is no. And if that means the use of military force, unattractive as it is, then I think we have to look at it.
Don't you think that they believe that? I mean, look, you got some really strong generals in there all over the place in this administration, plus you have a hard-nosed president on defense matters. Don't you believe that they would not wait until they shoot a missile before making sure that they don't have a nuclear missile capability?
David, if you look at the op-ed written by General Mattis,
we talked about it, I know, but don't you? The way I read it, particularly when they said things like "we're not for regime change in North Korea," is sort of wink, wink, nod, nod. Of course, we really do believe that. That's how I read it.
I don't think so. No, I think that's exactly what they want. And this, when you say this to the North Koreans, we don't want regime change, we're not looking for reunification, we do have this concern about your nuclear capability we'd like to talk to. You know, it's only a matter of time before the North Korean answer is, of course, sweetie, when do you want to talk?
Well, let's move to Barcelona. Who would have thought that it'd be less sensitive to talk about terrorism? But the president bringing up the issue of border security with regard to his criticism of Democrats, was that fair?
I think it is. Look, I don't think the Democratic Party as a whole, and I'm afraid to say elements of the Republican Party, yet understand that the only way to deal as a strategic matter with the terrorist threat is to treat it for what it is. It's a war against the United States and our way of life. And treating it as a law enforcement matter, I think, is doomed to failure. I think that's the problem Europe is encountering now, and I very much fear we're going to encounter it soon thereafter.
Well, but the difference, and I would dare say this is one reason, as terrible as the terror strikes here have been, they're nothing compared to both the number and the severity of the terrorist attacks abroad. I have to think that's partly because of the lack of border security overseas.
Well, and I think it's also the number of terrorists who got into Europe as a consequence of Germany's decision and others to let so many in. And you know, now that they're in Europe, they obviously pose a threat to Europe, but it's one airplane ride away from coming to the United States.
It is, but again, the freedom with which you talk to law enforcement officials over there, they say one of the difficulties in tracking these people is because they just travel from country to country with no concern whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that, and you've outlined it, is they treat it as a law enforcement matter, and
Right.
and that means you're playing
Exactly.
defense all the time, and you know, if you do that, you're going to see, we're going to be shocked and surprised yet again by another attack in Spain, by a knifing in Finland, by another terrorist attack here and there. It's just going to go on as far as the eye can see.
I'm afraid you're right. Ambassador John Bolton, with those encouraging words, I wish you a good weekend. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.